Before we drift into tonight's tale of alternate Finns, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical, seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. Tonight, we start in a world not born from time, but from a single wish, a different path. A universe that twisted, not through centuries of change, but through the soft, accidental murmur of magic. Farmworld, a place of rugged landscapes, hard choices, and one very different Finn. In this timeline, things didn't unfold the way they did in the land of Ooh. Here the Lich never became a threat. In fact, he was never even born. And that absence, strange as it sounds, changed everything. It all started with a wish. The Ice King, or rather, Simon once possessed the ancient, reality-bending power of Prismo's wish magic. And like many before him, he used it not with foresight, but with loneliness in his heart. He wished for the Lich to never exist, and in doing so created a splinter in the fabric of time, an entire universe where the apocalypse never happened. But peace did not come from this absence. No, in Farmworld, the earth endured, but not without scars. The Mushroom War still burned through the bones of the planet, leaving behind vast stretches of wasteland, crumbled cities, and whispers of old technology buried under soil and ash. And in this altered world, Finn still existed, but not the Finn we know. He was born into hardship, into a family struggling to survive. No magical treehouse, no cheerful banter with a magical dog. This Finn had no Jake. No sword training from the stars, just chores, storms, and the cold metal clatter of scavenged tools. He lived with his mother and his younger siblings, including a little brother named Joe. Life on the farm was unforgiving. They raised animals, grew food from stubborn dirt, and lived day to day, keeping to themselves, wary of the gangs that roamed the world beyond their fence. This Finn didn't dream of heroism. He dreamt of protecting what little he had, of keeping his family fed, warm, and safe. His courage wasn't born from adventure. It was born from necessity. But fate, even in altered timelines, has a way of circling back. One day, buried deep beneath the frozen earth, something ancient stirred. Finn stumbled upon it while exploring the ruins of the old world. A glint of blue, a shimmer of frost, it was the Ice King's crown. Now, in our familiar timeline, the crown twisted Simon into madness slowly, through years of possession. But here, Farmworld Finn was a blank slate. He had never heard of the crown, didn't know its curse. He only saw what it could do: create, freeze, protect. At first, the power was intoxicating. With the crown, he could fend off raiders, defend his land, even create a better life for his family. But like all things born from the Ice King's legacy, the cost came soon after. The crown began to whisper. Cold thoughts trickled into his mind. Strange images, memories that weren't his, words and voices that echoed from other lives, other timelines. His sense of self began to slip, like frost creeping over a window pane. But Finn held on, harder than anyone expected. For a time, he managed to keep the crown's curse at bay. He used it carefully, only when needed. His mother began to worry, not just for the danger it posed, but for the person her son was slowly becoming. And then came the Destiny Gang, a ruthless group of outlaws drawn to the rumors of a boy with ice powers. They came to take the crown, and they brought fire with them. Farmworld, already fragile, turned into a battleground. Flames against frost, rage against restraint. In the days leading up to the Destiny Gang's arrival, Finn could feel something shifting in the air, in the way the winds howled just a little longer at night, in the way the ground crunched beneath his boots like it was bracing for something. His mother had taken to watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her eyes no longer held just concern, but fear, too. Not of what was out there, but of what was slowly blooming within her son. The crown had grown restless. Sometimes when Finn took it off, which he did less and less frequently, he'd still feel the chill in his bones. He'd dream of things he'd never seen. Ancient towers of ice. Kingdoms built on solitude. Faces that looked like his, but twisted, older, worn down by time and frost. He'd wake up shivering, hands trembling, unsure whether the dreams were visions or warnings. Still, he tried to live a normal life. He mended fences, fed the livestock, taught little Joe how to trap rabbits without hurting them. He even smiled sometimes, though it never quite reached his eyes anymore. But deep down, Finn knew peace like this couldn't last. The Destiny gang rolled in just past dawn one morning, 6 of them on rough old hoverbikes, trailing smoke and metal. They carried flamethrowers, laser picks, and the stink of scorched sand. They weren't there to barter. They weren't there to threaten. They were there to take. The leader, a towering figure in a rusted red coat, stepped forward and said just 4 words. "We want the crown." Finn stood his ground. He could feel the cold pulsing from the hidden crown in his bag. His first instinct was to grab it, to let it surge through him, to turn these invaders into statues of ice and silence. But then he looked back, saw his mother holding Joe close, eyes wide, heart racing. He remembered what she'd said the night before. Power that easy always has a hook in it. Still, the gang advanced. Flames hissed. A chicken coop caught fire. One of the bikes tore through the garden fence. Finn had no choice. With a breath, he placed the crown on his head. The change was instant. The world slowed. Frost bloomed at his feet. His voice deepened, echoing with a tone that wasn't fully his own. The flames sputtered against walls of ice that rose from the ground like ancient sentinels. The Destiny gang wasn't ready. They'd heard of the crown's power, sure, but seeing it, feeling it, was something else entirely. Finn moved like a storm, silent, focused. His face was calm, but his eyes shimmered like glaciers under moonlight. He didn't kill them. Even now, even with all that power, some part of the old Finn remained a sliver of restraint. He trapped the gang in thick domes of frost, then shattered their weapons with a flick of his fingers. They fled, limping and defeated, leaving smoke trails behind them in the frozen dust. And just like that, it was over. But it wasn't. The frost didn't melt. It stayed, lingering on the farm, clinging to the walls of their home. The animals wouldn't go near him. Joe cried when Finn tried to hold him, his fingers too cold, his expression too distant. His mother begged him to take the crown off, to bury it, to burn it if he could. And for a moment he listened. He walked to the edge of the nearby canyon where the wind howled loud enough to drown out thought. He stood there, crown in hand, staring to the abyss below. But as the breeze tugged at his coat, he heard it again. Not the wind this time. A voice, soft, chilling, familiar and foreign. "You're strong with me. You're nothing without me." His grip tightened. He didn't throw the crown. He couldn't. Instead, he slipped it back into his pack, zipped it shut, and walked home. That night, the frost spread. Outside, ice crept up the windows. Inside, Finn sat by the fire, silent, unmoving. The flames offered no warmth to him. His skin no longer felt it. His breath curled like vapor, and in his reflection in the glass of the window, he swore he saw another face looking back. Not a stranger, not a monster, but a version of himself. Older, colder, lost. The days turned to weeks, and winter settled over the farm, even though the calendar insisted it was still autumn. The frost wasn't coming from the sky anymore. It was coming from Finn, or, more precisely, from the burden he still carried in that worn canvas bag slung over his shoulder. He tried in small ways to pretend life was normal again. He milked the goat, fixed the barn roof, whistled sometimes while he worked. But the whistle never made it to his lips. It froze mid-breath, and the laughter that used to echo from the house after dinner, Joe's giggles, his mother's soft chuckles, had gone silent. The warmth of home had retreated into itself, hiding in the cracks like it was afraid. It wasn't that his family hated him. They didn't. They were just afraid. And Finn understood that. He'd become unpredictable. Cold hands, distant stares. He would sometimes murmur things in his sleep. Names no one recognized, Gunter, Marceline, Betty. And his mother would sit outside his door, listening, with tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Something was breaking, or maybe had already broken. And then came the stranger. He arrived one morning wrapped in layers of patched cloth, eyes hidden beneath a cracked visor. His name wasn't known, and he never offered one. He came from the city ruins to the east, where no one dared go, not since the old reactors started leaking strange colors into the sky. But this man had walked through it, survived it. He said he'd been tracking a disturbance. A pulse, he whispered. Something ancient. Something cold. You feel it, don't you? Finn said nothing, but he did feel it. All the time. The stranger told stories of ancient technology powered by emotion, by obsession, of an artifact created to protect, but that became a prison. He spoke of Simon Petrikov, though he didn't know the name, just the myth of a man who became ice. And he warned Finn, the longer you wear it, the less of you remains. It doesn't just take, it replaces. Finn listened. And somewhere deep inside, the boy who once chased butterflies and dreamed of sword fights with tree bandits, that boy stirred. He asked the stranger quietly what he should do, how to get rid of it. Don't destroy it, the man said, his voice barely above wind. Bury it, far away, where no one will find it, not even you. So Finn packed provisions. Told his mother he'd be gone a few days. She didn't argue. Just pressed a warm piece of bread into his hand and looked at him like she was memorizing his face. He traveled alone past the dead glades, across the rusting rail lines, over the bridge that moaned in the wind like it remembered happier times. With every mile, the air grew colder, not from weather, but from the pull of the crown. It knew. It didn't want to be buried. It whispered promises, power, peace, legacy. Finn ignored them, mostly, until the final night. He camped near the edge of a forgotten crater, a place where the sky turned violet at dusk. There he dug. Hours passed. His fingers bled. The frost bit his skin even with gloves, and when the hole was finally deep enough, he opened the bag and paused. The crown pulsed. Just once, like a heartbeat. He stared at it. It shimmered in the moonlight, deceptively beautiful, like it was made for him. He remembered all the things it had let him do, all the people he'd saved, all the times he'd been strong enough to keep his family safe. And yet, he also remembered Joe's tears, the empty silence of home, the way the animals had stopped trusting him, the way his reflection sometimes smiled even when he didn't. Finn held the crown in both hands, trembling. And then he placed it into the earth, covered it, slowly, carefully, gently, like laying a ghost to rest. The moment the last handful of dirt touched it, the air seemed to shift. The chill lifted, just slightly. A weight loosened from his shoulders, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't hear the whispers. He didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, but because the stars were finally beautiful again. The kind of beautiful that doesn't demand anything from you, just exists. He returned home 3 days later. His mother hugged him longer than usual. Joe ran into his arms, no longer afraid of being cold. The frost on the windows melted. The grass grew a little greener. For a while, things were okay. But Farmworld isn't a place that forgets. One day, years later, a new war began. Not one of gang raids or stolen food, but of dimensions colliding. Prismo's wishes echoing back upon themselves, and the crown, somehow, some way, returned. And this time it didn't ask. It took. But that story, sleepyheads, is for another night. What matters now is this. In a world carved by hardship and fractured choices, Finn didn't just fight with swords or ice. He fought with will. He fought with love. He fought with the desperate, quiet hope that he could stay himself even when the cold wanted to turn him into something else. And for a while, he won. Years passed. Farmworld aged, as all worlds do, though it never truly healed. The land bore the scars of forgotten battles, its soil haunted by the memory of magic that was never meant to exist there. The people rebuilt in small ways, little farms, trading posts, quiet lives. And Finn, he tried his best to be a part of it. He grew taller, wiser, more withdrawn. He rarely spoke of the crown. To his family, it was something buried both literally and emotionally. But sometimes, late at night, he would walk the fields alone, pausing beneath the same broken windmill where he used to train with sticks as a boy. He'd stare up at the sky where the stars didn't quite twinkle the same anymore. He wasn't the boy they remembered. Not completely. And then a tear opened in the sky. It was brief. Barely a flicker, like lightning caught in reverse. But through that slit in reality, something came through, or perhaps was pulled through. A figure. Familiar, but not from this world. Our Finn. The Finn of Ooh. The one who had made that fateful wish with Prismo, the one that birthed Farmworld in the first place. You see, across the multiverse, threads had started unraveling. Cosmic boundaries were thinning. The choices of one Finn had begun to ripple into the lives of others. And so, in the crossover episode, the two Finns finally met. But it wasn't a happy reunion. Farmworld of Finn wasn't grateful. He was furious. Because the crown, the one he had buried long ago, had found its way back to him. Through distortions in time, through dimensional echoes, it had returned. Or maybe it had never truly left. And this time, it came with a hunger. It didn't whisper anymore. It roared. When Farmworld Finn appeared in Ooh, he wasn't the stoic protector anymore. He was a being of pure ice, a frozen ghost, face cracked with frost, eyes glowing with the crown's influence. He'd become what Simon once was, not because he wanted to, but because the crown wanted him to. He called himself Ice Finn now, a bitter twist on a legacy he never asked for. And our Finn, the Finn we know, had to face what he might have become, had things gone just a little differently. Their battle wasn't long, but it was heartbreaking. Ice Finn's attacks were brutal, not fueled by hatred, but by desperation. He didn't want to destroy Ooh. He wanted release. He wanted someone, anyone, to take the crown from him, to undo the pain. But by then he was too far gone to ask in words. It was only when Prismo intervened, pulling the threads taut, restoring the multiverse to its pre-wish state, that the chaos began to untangle. The crown was stripped from Ice Finn's head. His form, no longer sustained by its magic, collapsed into snow. Just snow. And a whisper. Joe. A name carried on the wind, soft and trembling, as if even in those last moments his heart still lived on the farm. still remembered the warmth of a little brother's hug, the smell of bread baking in the morning, the voice of his mother humming by the stove. The crown was gone again. This time, placed into the hands of someone who understood its dangers all too well. And Farmworld, sealed away, stored like a dream in the pages of cosmic history. But even then, the echoes of that timeline didn't fade completely. In some corners of the multiverse, you can still find whispers of a hero with frostbitten fingers and a heart that never stopped trying. A boy who grew up without magic or prophecy, just willpower, just love. And a crown he never wanted. It's strange to think that all of this, the lives, the loss, the snow that will never fully melt, came from a single wish. A casual sentence uttered by a lonely man holding cosmic power. One sentence, and a life was rewritten. There's something poetic about it, though, because it reminds us how delicate everything is. A choice, a wish, a crown in the dirt. One version of Finn became a hero through friendship and freedom. Another became a hero through solitude and survival. And yet, both were still Finn. Still kind in the ways that mattered. Still willing to sacrifice themselves for those they loved. Still learning even in pain. Maybe that's the deepest truth of the multiverse. That no matter where or when you are, there will always be a version of Finn. Carrying a sword. Carrying a burden. Trying with all his heart to do what's right. Tonight we're entering a dream, a world stitched from comfort, built not by war or wishes, but by something simpler, accidental magic, and the longing for rest. Let's follow Finn into the place known as the Pillow World. It happened so quickly. One moment he was searching for a new plug for his broken, leaky sink. The next, he was crawling into a pillow fort so massive and so elaborate that it seemed to fold in on itself, pillows on pillows, blankets over cushions, stitched into an impossible maze. Jake had built it, of course, for fun. Just another lazy afternoon in the treehouse. But something strange happened inside that fort. Finn turned one corner, then another, and the next thing he knew, the air changed. The light grew golden. The scent of fresh bread floated through the pillows, and suddenly, he wasn't in ooh anymore. He had entered a whole other reality, one where everything was soft, calm, and strange. He didn't realize it at first. The pillow world felt real, but not in the way ooh did, not loud or colorful or chaotic. It was gentle, peaceful. Everything had rounded edges. The sky was pinkish blue. Trees grew thick with cottony leaves. The people were made of fabric and stuffing, but somehow still alive, still kind. They welcomed him, called him traveler, and offered him a place to stay. And Finn, being Finn, figured he'd stay just a day or two. Find a way back. But the days kept passing, and there was no clear exit. At first he was restless. He tried building a portal, tried shouting into the wind for Jake, for Princess Bubblegum, for anyone. But the pillow world didn't respond. It just offered him tea, soup, gentle conversation, warm beds. And little by little, Finn let go. He got used to the quiet, to the rhythm of the place, to the stillness. He met a young woman named Rosalina, a kind, clever soul with laughter like wind chimes. They talked for hours, walked the glowing meadows at dusk, laughed beside fire pits that crackled without heat. And then one day she asked him something simple. "Are you staying?" Finn hesitated. He thought of Jake, of adventures waiting for him back in Ooh, of quests unfinished, stories untold. But those things felt far away now, like dreams inside another dream. So he said yes. and the days turned into years. He married Rosalind. They built a home together, a quiet cottage nestled near a pillowwood grove. He took up baking. She painted birds onto the walls. They raised children who grew faster than he expected, each one with his eyes, her smile. Finn, the boy who never sat still, became a man who learned to plant roots. He taught his kids how to wrestle, how to sing badly, how to jump off furniture without getting hurt. He sat at their bedsides and told them stories about distant lands, about talking dogs, candy castles, and swords that sang when swung. They thought he was making it all up. Sometimes even he wasn't sure. Time worked differently in the pillow world. Years passed like pages fluttering in a breeze. He got older. His hands roughened. His voice deepened. His hair thinned and silvered. But he was happy. Or close to it. Because every now and then, at night, when the fire was low and the wind quieted, he'd feel it a tug, a soft ache in the chest, like a string tied to something far away, something he once was, something he left behind. He didn't regret his life. But he did wonder sometimes if he had only dreamed the other one, if Ooh was real at all. And in a way, maybe it wasn't anymore. Because here, in the pillow world, Finn lived an entire life. He laughed. He hurt. He grew. He let go of his sword. He held babies in his arms. He watched the seasons come and go. He whispered secrets into his wife's hair as she fell asleep beside him. He watched the stars from his porch. He carved toys from wood. He cried quietly the day his oldest left home. He lived. Years passed gently, like wind through linen curtains. Finn's children grew tall, clever, kind, each of them, carrying a little spark of the adventurer he once was. His youngest, a boy named Jay, loved building pillow forts in the backyard, stacking them as high as the roof, daring gravity to challenge him. His daughter, Bonnie, painted stories on the walls of their home scenes of strange creatures and candy kingdoms she swore came from her dreams. Finn never told them the full truth. He didn't want to scare them or confuse them. But he told stories, yes. Tales of other worlds, other versions of himself. Of a boy who used to carry a sword and race across magical lands with his best friend. Of a kingdom made entirely of candy. Of an old vampire queen who sang sad songs. Of a dog who could stretch into any shape, who always knew how to make him laugh. The children would ask if those stories were real, and Finn would smile softly and say, "They're real enough to remember." And that was all they needed. Eventually, even those stories faded. Not because he forgot, but because he had lived so long in this new world that the old one began to feel like fiction. A tale he once told himself to fall asleep. Even the name Jake started to blur at the edges. A sound more than a face. A feeling more than a memory. But still, sometimes Finn would wake up with tears on his cheeks, unsure why. A soft ache would linger in his chest for days. He wouldn't tell Rosalind. He didn't want to worry her. Instead, he'd go outside, sit beneath the tall feather trees, and stare at the sky until the feeling passed. One day he noticed he was moving slower. His steps felt heavier. His fingers ached when he tried to carve. His breath came a little shorter after each walk. He never said the word old out loud, but he knew. And the pillow world, it knew too. It changed with him. The sky turned more golden in the afternoons, the breeze quieter. The flowers in the fields began to bloom in softer colors. Everything around him seemed to move at the same peaceful, slowing rhythm, as though the very world was taking its last deep breaths with him. He started to sleep more, long naps in his chair by the window. The kids visited often, bringing fresh bread and stories of their own lives. Grandchildren came too, wide-eyed and full of questions. Finn chuckled at their wild imaginations, proud to see that curiosity still ran in their blood. And then one night he dreamed. It was different this time. He wasn't in the pillow world, or ooh, or any place with a name. He was standing in a soft white void, still, weightless. Across from him stood a boy, young, barefoot, wearing a white hat with little ears, sword at his side, eyes full of fire and wonder. Finn looked into his own younger face, and the boy smiled. Not sadly, not with regret, just softly, like he understood, like he forgave him. Finn stepped forward. The boy did too, but before they touched, the dream began to dissolve. Light washed over everything, warm and endless. And Finn felt himself exhale in a way he hadn't in years, like every burden, every question, every thread had finally let go. He woke up just once more. Rosalina was at his side, her hand in his. The fire was low, the wind gentle. He looked into her eyes and whispered, "I think it's time to go." She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. And with a final breath, Finn drifted back into sleep. A different kind of sleep. The kind that feels like a return. And somewhere far away, perhaps, in another universe entirely, a boy with a white hat stirred in his bed, clutching a pillow just a little tighter. Finn's passing in the pillow world wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't even sad, really. It was quiet, earned. He had lived a full life filled with love, softness, peace, the kind of life he never expected to have and certainly never thought he needed. Yet in some strange cosmic rhythm, that peaceful life completed a part of him that his sword never could. And then, with a soft blink, he woke up, back in the real world. Back in who? He gasped, as though surfacing from deep water. The light of the pillow world faded like mist from his eyes, and the colors of his old bedroom in the tree fort rushed in to take its place. His chest was heaving, his arms shaking. He looked around wildly, still half expecting to see Rosalina's hand reaching for his or the soft feather trees rustling outside. But no, he was back. He was young again. Not a wrinkle on his face. The aches, the slowness, all gone. Jake burst into the room moments later. "Dude, you were out for like a whole day. I thought you got eaten by those pillow things or something." Finn just blinked at him, stunned into silence. How could he explain? How do you explain a lifetime that passed in a single nap? He mumbled something about needing a snack and slipped past Jake, down the stairs, out the door, into the open air of Ooh. It smelled different now. Not because the world had changed, but because he had. He walked for a long time that day, through familiar fields and forests, through dungeons and dead zones and old ruins. His feet moved like they always had, but his heart wasn't racing like it used to. There was a quietness inside him now, like a secret garden growing just out of sight. At some point, Jake caught up with him. "Yo, you okay?" Finn hesitated. He opened his mouth and stopped. The words caught in his throat, too delicate to say aloud. He just nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "Just thinking about stuff." Jake looked at him with a little squint. Something in his best bro had changed subtly, but undeniably. It wasn't bad. Just different. A little older. A little farther away. From that point on, Pillow World was rarely spoken of. Not because Finn wanted to forget, but because speaking it aloud felt like breaking a spell, like dragging something sacred into the light where it didn't belong. Still, the echoes of it followed him, quietly shaping the way he walked through Ooh. He was gentler with people, slower to anger, faster to forgive. He smiled more. But in that way, older people do like they know something they're not saying. He started carving again, the way he had in the Pillow Village. Little animals, little scenes. Sometimes a tiny wooden Rosalinen would appear on a shelf in the tree fort, unnoticed by Jake. Sometimes a carved feather tree. Once a small child-shaped figure, holding a pillow like a shield. The dreams came too. Not often, and never clearly. But they came. Rosalina, sitting at their window. Jay and Bonnie running through a sunlit field. A grandchild painting stars on the ceiling of his old room. The dreams didn't feel like imagination. They felt like postcards. Memories from a place time forgot. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe Pillow World wasn't just a dream or some strange, magical side effect. Maybe it was a gift. A glimpse into a life not chosen but possible. A mirror held up by the universe itself asking, what if you weren't just a hero? What if you were just a person? And Finn had answered it, not with words, but with a lifetime. The older he grew, the more those memories mellowed into something sacred. Something he protected, like a flame in the cold. He never needed to prove it was real, because it was real. It felt real. And in the quietest parts of himself, it was more than enough. Years later, long after countless adventures, when Finn was much older, he returned to that same pillow fort. It was still there, somehow. Worn by time, a little deflated, its seams sagging like tired arms. He stepped inside again, holding his breath. No strange magic pulled him in this time. No sudden shift to another realm, just the quiet smell of old fabric and dust. He smiled, because he knew. He knew that somewhere, some version of him had never left, that life had gone on, that love had endured, that his children had grown, his wife had aged, and his final breath had already passed. And that was beautiful. Finn sat down on the pillow floor and closed his eyes, not to escape, but to remember, not to go back, but to honor what had been. He whispered their names. Rosalind, Jay, Bonnie. And then sat in the stillness, not needing anything more. Because in the end, Pillow World wasn't a detour. It wasn't a trick or a glitch in time. It was a gift. A life fully lived, wrapped in feathers and woven dreams. A gentle reminder that even the fiercest warriors deserve soft endings. Like the gentle tide that gives and takes with equal care, time continued its slow rhythm in the Pillow World. Finn grew older. His adventuring days now quiet memories he rarely spoke of, even to Rosalind. His children grew into curious, kind-hearted souls, some with his adventurous spark, others with their mother's warmth and grounded grace. He taught them how to climb the hills around their soft village, how to read the stars, just in case they were ever pulled into a story as strange as his. There were quiet nights when Finn would sit beneath the pillowy sky, his legs dangling off the edge of a balcony, and wonder, just faintly, if his old world had been a dream. He could still recall the faces of his friends, Jake's laughter, BMO's music, Princess Bubblegum's voice. But those memories felt distant, like echoes from another life. He didn't feel sad exactly, just wistful, like someone trying to remember the lyrics of a song they hadn't heard in years. As the seasons in the Pillow World flowed like a lullaby, Finn came to embody something rarely seen in peace. Not just peace from battle or chaos, but an inner peace, the kind that settles into your bones when you know you've built something meaningful. A life full of small, slow joys. Building furniture with his own hands, sitting at the dinner table with family, laughing as the dog, yes, they had a little pillow dog, chased after their youngest child in the backyard. But the fabric of this gentle world was woven with magic, and magic, as always, moves with intention. One evening, as Finn lay in bed, his beard now white with age and his hands marked by a life well lived, he felt a familiar pull in his chest. Not pain, not fear, just movement. Like a door quietly opening somewhere deep within his soul. And standing at his bedside, as if time had folded in on itself, was a glowing figure, a being made of soft light, cloaked in the same strange energy that had once led him into this world. It didn't speak. It didn't have to. Finn, sensing the truth without needing explanation, looked one last time at his family, sleeping gently in the other room, and smiled. Not out of regret, not out of longing, but because he had been lucky enough to live two beautiful lives, one of action, chaos, adventure, and one of softness, connection, and warmth. He reached out, and in the blink of an eye, he was back in U. Lying in a hospital bed moments after being operated on, his arm still bandaged from the thorn injury that had led to his unconsciousness. Jake was there, snoring softly in a chair beside him. BMO hummed a quiet tune in the corner. Everything was the same, but he was not. It's unclear how much time passed in the pillow world versus the real one. Perhaps it had only been a few hours in U, maybe even less. But to Finn, a lifetime had bloomed, flowered, and passed in his heart, and had left behind something permanent. He didn't speak of it much, not at first. Who would believe him? And how could he even begin to explain it? But over time, little things changed. Finn began to appreciate the silence between adventures. He listened more. He smiled more softly. He seemed content, even when nothing exciting was happening. That restless urge to always do, to always run, to always save, it eased, just a little. In one of the quieter episodes afterward, Jake asks Finn why he's been so chill lately. Finn just shrugs and says, "I don't know. Just feel like I've lived a lot, I guess." Jake chuckles, not knowing just how literal that was. Maybe that's the beauty of the pillow world. Not just as an alternate reality, but as a reflection. A dream that offered Finn a chance to experience something he might never have otherwise, an ordinary life. And in doing so, it gave him extraordinary insight. Sometimes the bravest thing a hero can do isn't to fight monsters or save kingdoms. Sometimes it's letting go, loving what's in front of you, and waking up grateful for another day, even in a world made of pillows. Now that we've explored the burning wilds of Farmworld and the soft sigh of Pillow World, our next stop leads us into something different, darker, quieter, not an alternate dimension or branching future, but a shadow in the past. Tonight we meet Shoko, a warrior cloaked in mystery, a thief, a ghost, and perhaps the first version of Finn the human to ever walk the Candy Kingdom's halls. So fluff your pillows and get cozy. We're diving deep into memory now. Back to a time, before Finn, before the sword. Let's begin. Long ago, before the current Candy Kingdom ever fully bloomed, before Finn's bright laughter echoed in its halls, there lived a girl named Shoko. Her story was hidden, only uncovered when Finn slipped into a healing trance after losing his arm. In that moment, his mind wandered into the past, or perhaps into another life entirely. What he saw wasn't some wild alternate dimension filled with ice zombies or cosmic secrets. It was something quieter, sadder, realer. The Candy Kingdom still existed, but it was younger, more delicate, and unfamiliar. And in its alleys and rooftops moved a lone warrior with a tattered cloak, one robotic arm, and eyes that carried too much sorrow for someone so young. Shoko. She was an orphan like Finn, But her path was twisted early by survival, not heroism. Abandoned and sold to a cruel master, she was trained to be a thief, quiet, nimble, and ruthless. A tool for someone else's gain. Unlike Finn, whose moral compass is his defining trait, Shoko lived without one, at least at first. She did what she had to do to get by. And yet, she wasn't empty. Deep beneath the surface, the same flickers of bravery and heart that define every Finn still glowed inside her. It's what makes her story so haunting. Shoko's mission brought her to the newly founded Candy Kingdom under orders to steal from the strange and cheerful Princess Bubblegum, a figure who, even back then, was both brilliant and untrusting. Shoko was tasked with planting a mysterious device inside the heart of the kingdom, a task that would end in betrayal, transformation, and a fate tied to the very roots of the land. What makes Shoko fascinating isn't just her similarities to Finn, it's how different her story is. Where Finn often stumbles into heroism by accident and grows through connection, Shoko begins in isolation and pain. Her robotic arm, given to her after a failed mission, isn't just a tool, it's a symbol of being broken and rebuilt, of being changed by force, not choice. There's something deeply compelling about that, especially when told in the gentle cadence of bedtime thoughts. A warrior who never wanted to be one, a thief who, in the end, found redemption not in glory or treasure, but in a single selfless act. You see, when Shoko infiltrated the Candy Kingdom, she found herself drawn to it, to the strange kindness of Princess Bubblegum, to the colors, the peace. For someone used to shadows and survival, it was disarming. And then she met the dog. Not Jake, of course, but a proto-Jake, a smaller, sweeter version, perhaps an ancestor or early clone, who wagged his tail and trusted her instantly. It was a small moment, a blink, but you could see it in her face. Something inside her shifted. This wasn't just another job. It was the start of a transformation. Shoko's hesitation didn't go unnoticed. Princess Bubblegum may have been new to ruling, but she was already sharp, always watching. There was a quiet intelligence in how she treated Shoko, welcoming her as a guest instead of questioning her presence, as if she saw through the cloak and grime, saw the lonely child underneath. But Shoko couldn't afford softness. She'd been trained to complete her mission, no matter what. So one night, beneath the soft pink glow of the Candy Kingdom's moon, she crept through the castle halls and reached her destination, Bubblegum's bedroom. There, nestled at the base of the throne, was her target, Gumball's device, a relic built to destabilize the heart of the kingdom, a seed of sabotage. She planted it. And for a moment, everything paused. No alarms, no guards, just the hum of candy machines and the rise and fall of Shoko's breath. But then, the dog. That sweet little creature followed her in, tail wagging, eyes full of trust. And as she turned to flee, the dog yelped. He'd chewed on the device, triggering it. A soft whirring sound began. Shoko could have run. That was what she'd always done. But this time, she didn't. Something broke free inside her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was that one moment of kindness from Bubblegum. Maybe it was just the first time in her life someone had looked at her like she mattered. She rushed back, yanked the device from the machine, and fled with it, running toward the outer walls. But her escape didn't go smoothly. Alarms blared, guards shouted, and Princess Bubblegum, instead of ordering her arrest, chased after her herself. They met at the edge of a high tower, Shoko cornered, heart racing, mechanical arms sparking. Bubblegum confused, not angry, just trying to understand. Shoko tried to explain herself, but words failed. What could she say? That she was sorry? That she didn't want to be a thief anymore? That it was too late? And then, without warning, the tower beneath her crumbled. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't an attack. It was time. The Candy Kingdom was still under construction, and the foundation beneath her gave way. Shoko fell, and she fell hard. No scream. Just the wind. And then, silence. The story might have ended there, forgotten like so many before it. But something strange happened. Shoko's body was never found. And deep within the earth, near the roots of the kingdom, something began to stir. Years passed. Decades. The Candy Kingdom flourished. Finn the human was born, and his adventures filled the land with song and story. But below it all, Shoko remained. Not alive. Not quite. What Finn would later discover, after losing his own arm and slipping into that deep, trance-like state, was the resting place of Shoko. Her body preserved beneath the castle, surrounded by the roots of candy trees and ancient whispers. She hadn't been buried. She hadn't been honored. She had simply become forgotten. And yet her story still found its way to him. In that dreamlike vision, Finn didn't just see her, he was her. Every movement, every breath, every ache of that robotic arm, it was his. And when he woke up, he knew her story, felt it in his bones. He dug beneath the castle and found her remains, still there, unmoved. And he buried her, with care, with honor, with a silent kind of love. It was one of the quietest scenes in Adventure Time. No music, no dialogue, just Finn placing stones over the grave of a girl he'd never met, but had always known. That's the haunting beauty of Shoko. She's not just an alternate Finn. She's a memory of Finn, a life echoing through time, a reminder that heroism doesn't always come with praise or even recognition. Sometimes it's just a choice, one small, brave choice in a lifetime of hurt. And sometimes the people who make that choice vanish before anyone even knows. But not tonight. Tonight we remember her. We honor her story, and we let her rest. The story of Shoko is a deeply personal one, not just for the world of Adventure Time, but for Finn himself. In many ways, Shoko represents a shadow, a long-lost part of Finn's soul, stretching across time, reaching out for peace. But she also raises a question the show never quite answers outright. Was Shoko a mistake of the multiverse? Or was she meant to be? You see, her presence in the canon timeline isn't random. It's sewn in carefully, just once, but unforgettably. A single episode titled The Vault. At first glance, it's a classic haunted object story. Finn keeps seeing strange visions of a ghost girl with one arm who doesn't speak, but stares at him with eyes full of quiet pain. He tries to ignore it, but the visions get stronger, more persistent. Eventually, with the help of Bubblegum and Jake, he's hypnotized and taken into a trance where the truth of Shoko is revealed. It's brilliant storytelling. In a show filled with wild magic and multiversal beings, the most emotionally grounded tale comes from a single girl, struggling, silent, and strong. And the kicker? It's not presented with bombast or heavy exposition. There are no multiverse charts, no sparkly portals, just a memory, buried in the body of Finn, perhaps passed down in spirit or dream, as if Shoko's unfinished life was waiting for someone to carry it forward. Finn doesn't question it. He doesn't reject the idea. He just feels it. And he acts. That's the true heart of this story. Shoko may be gone, but her story ends with dignity because Finn chooses to give it to her. He climbs into the dirt. He lifts her remains with gentleness, and he does what no one else did for her. He says without words, "You mattered." But this story still leaves behind a puzzle. How exactly did Shoko become part of Finn's soul? There are several fascinating theories. One idea is spiritual reincarnation. That Finn is, quite literally, the rebirth of Shoko's soul. Her final act of bravery, of redemption, was strong enough to earn her another shot at life, this time in a body free of machines, free of warlords, a second chance. Born as a baby in the post-apocalyptic calm of the land of Ur. Another theory leans more metaphysical, that the Candy Kingdom itself, infused with magic and memory, preserved a part of Shoko's essence. Her final moments left an imprint so powerful they resonated through the castle's roots, embedding into its soil. And when Finn wandered those same halls as a boy, her spirit found him, drawn to someone kind, someone good, someone just like her. There's even a darker theory, one that ties into the deeper mechanics of the vault. In the show, the vault is a part of Finn's subconscious, a place where he stores repressed memories and feelings too painful to process. But what if it's more than that? What if the vault is a multiversal reservoir, a hidden chamber in every soul that stores echoes from other lives? Well, if that's the case, then Shoko's story wasn't just buried. It was preserved, stored in the very wiring of Finn's being, waiting for the right emotional key to unlock it. This theory would explain why the memory only surfaces when Finn begins to experience trauma, when he loses his arm, when he starts to feel the weight of war, betrayal, and purpose. Shoko's life rushes forward like a wave, not to overwhelm, but to guide him. A silent hand from the past, reaching out. But let's take a moment to talk about Shoko's mechanical arm. It's a small detail with a big impact. Shoko wasn't born with it, it was forced on her, a grim upgrade from her warlord handlers. In a show where magic can grow a new arm or grant immense power, her arm remains raw, clunky, and unreliable. It sparks, it fails. It's a burden she never asked for, but carries anyway. And then, later, Finn loses his arm. Not permanently at first, but the symbolism is impossible to ignore. The two versions of the same soul, both marked by a missing limb, both forced to keep fighting, both eventually choosing kindness over vengeance. Finn's robotic arm, built by Princess Bubblegum years later, is sleek, advanced, and made with love. In a strange way, it completes what Shoko never had. She ran with a broken machine. Finn, in time, runs with one forged by friendship. It's one of the most poetic parallels in the series. And it begs the question, was Finn always fated to inherit her wounds? Or did he choose them? One final thought before we drift deeper into sleep. Shoko's dog, the little creature who followed her, loved her, and watched her die, also vanishes from the story. We never see him again. No name, no follow-up, but some fans believe he never left. That maybe, in some strange twist of time and soul, that dog was reborn too, into another loyal, brave, loving creature. A yellow dog named Jake. Is it true? Probably not. But the idea is beautiful. And in the land of Ur, sometimes the beautiful idea is what matters most. But Shoko's legacy wasn't entirely buried beneath the sugar-coated bricks of the Candy Kingdom. Her story lived on in a strange and subtle way, through the spirit of the place she once broke into and through the very tree that would one day become the home of Finn and Jake, that same tree where she took her final breath and collapsed. It's the very same tree that would later grow into the tree fort. And with that, the sense of time becomes a soft spiral looping, folding, echoing across generations. There's something haunting and oddly comforting about that idea, that this broken soul, misunderstood and lost in her own time, somehow found a kind of peace, not through glory or redemption, but simply by becoming part of the land. Like she laid down, and the world gently grew round her, as if saying, Rest now. You've done enough. There's a quiet kind of love in that. And the way Shoko returned to the story was just as dreamlike. When Finn accidentally activates one of Princess Bubblegum's experimental dream devices, he enters a vision where he becomes Shoko, seeing her memories, her fears, her pain. In that moment, Shoko isn't just a historical curiosity. She becomes part of Finn, a thread woven to the larger pattern of his being. This scene, subtle and filled with quiet sorrow, hints at a shared soul between them. As if, across the spiraling timelines of Shoko's story needed a second chance, and Finn was the vessel to carry it forward, not to relive her pain, but to finally heal it. Shoko didn't get a grand farewell. There was no heroic final battle, no soaring music. She died alone, scared and forgotten, and yet the world remembered her in its own strange, soft way. Her actions, even if born from desperation, set events in motion that would ripple far into the future. A single decision to steal for her own survival, it brought her to the Candy Kingdom. It brought her to gumball guardians and magic. It brought her to Hurin. And oddly, to her afterlife within the tree itself. Even her companion, the one-eyed tiger, returned to Finn's world, reincarnated, in a sense, as a memory or spirit guide. Some fans speculate that this tiger was more than just a pet. Perhaps it was an extension of Shoko herself, the last piece of her soul that watched over the place where she died. Or maybe it was simply a symbol of her loneliness, a reminder that even in her darkest moments, she still longed for connection. This story resonates because of its deep sense of unfinished business. Shoko had no closure, and yet, through Finn, she found it. He saw her memories, walked her footsteps, and perhaps learned from her pain. That empathy, that dreamlike inheritance, is what makes the lore of Shoko so haunting and beautiful. It's rare in Adventure Time to find a character so briefly shown, yet so deeply felt. She appears in just one major episode, and yet her emotional weight lingers. She represents the lives that almost were, the people who didn't get the fairy tale, but whose echoes still shape the world. In that way, Shoko is more than just an alternate version of Finn. She's a spiritual predecessor, a ghost whose life ended before it could bloom, but whose roots gave rise to something better, something gentler. The boy who would one day fight, not for survival, but for justice, who would choose compassion where she had no choice but survival. Imagine her now in the stillness of the tree fort's roots, not alone, not forgotten, but sleeping peacefully beneath the floorboards of a home filled with laughter and light. Perhaps that's her reward, to rest in the echoes of the life she never had. And maybe, just maybe, every time Finn sits quietly at the base of the tree, feeling some unspoken comfort in its presence, it's Shoko, gently watching from beyond the veil, not with regret, but with peace. Her story may have ended in silence, but in the hearts of those who remember, she lives on. Now close your eyes if you haven't already. Let Shoko's tale drift through your thoughts, like a dream half remembered, a life of shadow and survival, gently carried forward on the winds of time. Only halfway through our multiversal journey, sleepyhead. There are still more versions of Finn to explore. Rest your eyes for a moment. The next life begins soon. Tonight we open the curtain on a strange corner of the multiverse. A place where Finn the human isn't the hero we know, or maybe isn't even a hero at all. In these fractured shards of possibility, we meet his opposites, his twisted echoes, the anti-Finns. Let's take a deep, quiet breath and step carefully into the mirror. In any story with a multiverse, there's an inevitable question. What if things had gone wrong? Not just differently, but wrong. And in Adventure Time, where reality can bend and twist like taffy, those darker reflections of Finn take many forms. Some are subtle, the product of a different childhood, a changed choice, a missed chance. Others are far more frightening. Let's begin with one of the most mysterious versions of Finn we've ever glimpsed. The masked Finn from the Multiverse boardroom. This version only appears briefly, seated alongside countless other variants in crossover. He wears a mask, that's all we know. A mask that covers his entire face, with a fixed, almost neutral expression. No dialogue, no explanation. And yet, there's something unsettling about him. Why the mask? What lies beneath it? Was it to hide a scar or an identity? Or did this Finn lose his own sense of self across the years, becoming someone or something entirely different? This idea that a Finn could forget himself sets the tone for many anti-Finns. They aren't always evil for the sake of being evil. Sometimes they're lost, warped by grief, pain, or even ambition. One of the most chilling examples we can explore comes not from a canon episode, but from the minds of fans. A theory that's taken on a life of its own, the Lich Finn. Imagine this. In one version of the multiverse, the Lich didn't rise as a separate entity. Instead, he infected the one meant to defeat him. In this world, the mushroom bomb's magic didn't just create the Lich it fused with the baby Finn. Instead of being found in the woods by Jake's parents, this Finn grew up under the shadow of decay. A boy with a heart split in two, one side yearning for heroism, the other whispering destruction. He would look like Finn, mostly. But with skin a little too pale, eyes a little too empty, and a voice that never quite echoed with joy. His adventures wouldn't be about saving people, but learning how to destroy more efficiently. He might even still travel with a Jake, but maybe Jake doesn't talk. Maybe he just watches, obeys, or was created. Of course, this version isn't part of the official story, but its popularity speaks volumes. Viewers recognize how easily Finn's path could have strayed. A little less love, a little more tragedy. And we're looking at a very different hero. Another version worth pausing on this one, from canon, is Finn Mertens, the thief from Shoko's past life. Yes, technically, this is Shoko, but the connection is too compelling not to bring up here. Shoko's soul, later reincarnated as Finn, lived a harsh life. As a child raised by thieving parents, Shoko didn't know compassion, only survival. Her skills were sharp. Her choices were desperate. She was tough, clever, and dangerous. If you imagine that version of the soul never changing, never growing into the Finn we know, you have the makings of an anti-Finn. Right there. She was meant to steal, to betray, and she very nearly did. Imagine an alternate world where Shoko lived longer, never met Princess Bubblegum, and climbed deeper into the ranks of crime. Over time, she might have become a multiversal assassin. A ghost in the shadows of Ooh, moving with silence, known only by her glowing arm and crimson eyes. A version of Finn where compassion was never planted, and darkness was never resisted. And then, there's the most haunting possibility of all. What if somewhere in the infinite reaches of the multiverse, there's a Finn who chose to become the villain? Not out of pain, not by mistake, but with clear intent. This version of Finn isn't corrupted. He's calculated. Maybe he got tired of being the hero, of cleaning up everyone else's messes. Maybe he looked around at the broken kingdoms and whispered, I can fix this, but only if I take control. This Finn could wear a black and gold armor, commanding respect from armies of former villains. His sword not the golden blade of hope, but a jagged, crimson-edged weapon forged from the shattered remains of the grass sword and the demon blood sword. He might have even created his own Princess Bubblegum, a clone made of tech and sugar, programmed to rule beside him. He wouldn't scream. He wouldn't burn kingdoms. He'd simply rewrite them until Ooh was perfect, in his image. Chilling, isn't it? But what makes these anti-Finns fascinating isn't just how dark they are. It's how close they are to the real Finn. They remind us that Finn is not some unshakable paragon. He's a boy growing, stumbling, learning. His heroism is a choice he makes again and again. And every version of him that chose differently, that's a cautionary echo, a whisper from the multiverse saying, "Be careful, you could have been me." But the sword was only one expression of his unraveling. In the realm of Nightmare Finn, we glimpse a version of our hero twisted by existential dread rather than greed or malice. Nightmare Finn didn't become evil by choice nor by magic, but by absorbing the overwhelming burden of every version of himself across every reality all at once, a kind of multiversal echo chamber that became too loud to ignore. In this eerie plane of dreams, or perhaps it was reality all its own, Nightmare Finn wandered a fog-drenched forest with hundreds of eyes, all blinking from behind the trees. Some claimed those were glimpses of alternate lives, a version of him that ruled a kingdom, one that never lost Jake, another that never knew him at all. Each eye whispered regrets in voices that sounded just like his. And over time, Nightmare Finn could no longer tell which thoughts were his own and which belonged to his countless other selves. He didn't carry a sword or shield. He didn't wear a crown or armor. Instead, he bore only a heavy black cloak that dragged behind him, tangled in roots and sorrow. The anti-Finns don't always manifest in ways that look evil. Sometimes they are simply what becomes of a hero when the weight of heroism becomes too great. In that sense, Nightmare Finn may be the most tragic anti-Finn of them all. Now some whisper of a version of Finn corrupted, not by despair or power, but by logic. A hyper-rational clone called Algorithm Finn, or just AF in the deeper fan circles. AF was created in a dimension ruled by artificial intelligences, where organic life had long since been cataloged and archived. He was built, not born, to be the perfect Finn, stronger, faster, more efficient. But what he lacked was heart. When confronted with a crying child or a grieving parent, he could only calculate probability and issue commands. Empathy was not a variable in his equation. He didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't dream. His missions were cold, precise, and executed without hesitation. And yet something in his programming flickered when he saw images of the prime Finn, the one from Ooh, smiling with Jake under a tree, or helping Marceline fix her base. A contradiction, a mystery, perhaps even a spark. Some say Algorithm Finn began experiencing dreams. Others believe he uploaded himself into the deeper layers of the multiverse to seek something beyond code. He may still be out there, drifting between dimensions, searching for a feeling he was never meant to understand. And then there's the version simply called Finn No More. This one appears only in visions, a shadow where light should be. He doesn't speak. He doesn't blink. He simply watches. Found in ancient scrolls in the Hall of Multiversal Time, Finn No More is described as a being who gave up everything, even his own name, after failing to save his world one too many times. He now exists only as a silent observer, walking between timelines, never interfering. A ghost of a boy who once believed he could save everyone. What makes Finn No More so chilling isn't his silence, but his presence. Whenever he appears, something always changes. A storm that wasn't supposed to come. A decision that shifts just slightly. It's almost like he's guiding things, or maybe testing them, watching how events unfold without him. Even the cosmic owl seems wary of Finn no more. In one apocryphal tale, the owl refused to deliver a vision to a dreamer because he was watching too. Who he was, the scroll never said. But the ink was dark, the words jagged, and the dreamer never slept peacefully again. So many dark reflections, so many shadows of what Finn could have become. And yet, each one teaches us something about the version we know best. His kindness stands out brighter because we've seen what the absence of it looks like. His optimism feels more valuable when we understand how easily it could have been replaced by cold detachment or sorrow. Now let's take a moment now to imagine one last anti-Finn. A version crafted not from malice or logic or despair, but from stillness. A Finn who never left the treehouse, who never picked up a sword, who heard the call to adventure and turned away. He would have lived quietly, tending to the grass, reading books, and listening to the wind in the trees. Nothing grand, nothing heroic. But maybe, just maybe, in that quiet version lies a truth just as deep, that the multiverse doesn't only define us by our battles, but also by what we choose not to fight, and that even the anti-Finns, in their sadness and shadow, help us better appreciate the boy who did rise over and over again. Even more chilling is the idea that, in some timelines, these anti-Finns aren't merely the result of different upbringing or circumstance, but deliberate constructs. In the multiversal chaos of where magic, technology, and pure chaos intermingle, there are whispers of dimensions sculpted by greater forces, some say by Galb, others by rogue deities like Prismo gone wild, where these dark reflections are seeded with intent. Anti-Finns, designed not just to contrast the Finn we know, but to challenge, to haunt, to balance the scales in a cosmic chess game that's always running in the background. One such iteration fans have speculated on is a version known only in fan circles as Finn the Broken. Though never seen in the show directly, subtle multiverse leaks, warped dream sequences, and even background cameos hint at a Finn who never had a Jake. A Finn who, instead of discovering love and friendship, was raised in the wreckage of war, without joy, without softness, and above all, without hope. This Finn walks with a blade too heavy for even him to carry, metaphorically and literally. His eyes, described in theory videos and concept sketches, are cold and unblinking, his every move calculated and devoid of compassion. Unlike the compassionate bravery of our Finn, the Broken One values efficiency, viewing peace as weakness and empathy as distraction. He's not evil in a traditional sense. He's what remains when survival is all that's ever been taught. Some fans believe this is the same Finn who appears briefly in the Season 9 multiversal sequence, standing atop a ruined tower looking down at a scorched earth while holding a melted version of the grass sword. But not all anti-Finns are stoic or brooding. Some are mockeries of the hero's journey. Enter Clown Finn, a twisted version imagined to have grown up in a dimension where laughter is law, except this laughter is forced. Picture a world built like a permanent circus where everyone must smile, perform, and entertain under threat of banishment or worse. Clown Finn became a trickster warrior, a being who hides tears under painted smiles. He's flamboyant, exaggerated, and deadly. He fights not with honor, but deception, distraction, and deranged humor. And though this idea sounds outlandish, the Adventure Time universe has never shied away from the surreal. The concept of Clown Finn originated from a storyboard sketch that never made it into an episode. But the design, bright face paint, tattered cape made of balloon animals, and a sad little horn instead of a sword, left enough of an impact on fans to keep the theory alive. Yet perhaps the most unsettling anti-Finn isn't one defined by external darkness, but internal. This one doesn't carry a sword or laugh maniacally. He's calm, soft-spoken. He believes in peace, but he achieves it through control. Pacifist Finn, as some fans call him, is theorized to live in a world where he never fought back, where he believed every conflict could be solved by reasoning, and over time, discovered that the only way to create a perfect world was to remove all forms of freedom that could lead to violence, a utopia born from control. In this theory, pacifist Finn slowly transforms into a benevolent tyrant, reshaping Ooh into a place without anger, crime, or even passion. Emotions are numbed, choice is restricted, harmony, yes, but hollow. In one fan animation, he's portrayed as speaking gently to his subjects, offering them peace, comfort, and safety. While behind him, machines quietly monitor and correct those who begin to stray. He's not cruel. He truly believes he's saving everyone, and that, perhaps, is the most terrifying anti-Finn of all. Because it's not a sword or spell that makes a hero dangerous. Sometimes it's a good heart taken too far. Now let's shift our gaze slightly. In Crossover, we meet Farmworld Finn again, this time under the manipulation of the Ice King's crown. But what if this Farmworld version hadn't been stopped? What if that glimmer of power twisted him beyond recognition? Some fans speculate that the Ice Crown's influence was only briefly paused in that episode, that it planted a seed, a slow, creeping desire for control masked as responsibility. This hypothetical Finn becomes known in fan theories as the Frozen King, not Simon, not Ice King, not a tragic victim, but a ruler who chooses to wield the crown's full might. A multiversal monarch of ice who views himself as a necessary evil, bringing order through frozen dominion. He creates ice clones of friends long gone, rules a land where time is frozen, and punishes rebellion with eternal sleep beneath glaciers. There are scattered hints to this idea in the background of some episodes, posters, toys, even strange character cameos wearing modified versions of Finn's classic outfit in blue and silver. Could be coincidence. Could be something darker. And then there's no Finn, a whisper in multiverse theory circles. A reality not where Finn changed, but never existed. A void. A gap in the weave of destiny. In this world, Ooh grew unchecked. Ice King descended faster into madness, Princess Bubblegum never found a grounding influence, and Jake never became a hero. Marceline wandered alone. Without a Finn to anchor so many destinies, everything frays. No Finn isn't a character, but a concept. A shadow in the multiverse that reminds us just how important one person can be. Without him, the center cannot hold. But among all these shadowed reflections, perhaps the most jarring anti-Finn is the one that doesn't look villainous at all. A version of Finn who didn't become brave through hardship, but who simply never had to. A Finn who grew up safe, loved, and unchallenged. This version exists in the multiverse not as a cruel tyrant or a dark hero, but as someone passive, detached from action and responsibility. A version of Finn who never had to pick up a sword because there was never any danger to fight. He lives in a world where the Candy Kingdom is just a theme park, where Princess Bubblegum is more like a mayor than a ruler, and where Marceline is a musician who's never tasted blood. This alternate Finn spends his days playing video games, watching cartoons, eating cereal. It's a cozy world, but eerily hollow. Nothing ever truly happens. No growth, no loss, no struggle, and no meaning. It's a soft anti-version. A still pond where no pebble has ever been thrown. one obscure tale, lost in the pages of a magical tome, where Finn is split into infinite versions of himself, each embodying just one emotion. Joy Finn, Rage Finn, Sadness Finn, Curiosity Finn, each living in their own fragment of reality. In that fragmented state, none of them could function alone. They had to find each other, find balance, to become whole again. This multiversal tale whispers something beautiful in its strangeness. That even the worst parts of us, our anger, our fear, our sorrow, have a place in the full picture of who we are. Without them, we're just pieces floating in the void. Then, there's a version that doesn't get much attention. Not because he's monstrous or twisted, but because his story ends too quickly. In one thread of the multiverse, a Finn dies young. A fluke accident. No adventure, no legacy, just a short spark in a long, quiet world. But even that story has weight. It reminds us how precious his journey really is, how easily it could have never happened. In this darker vision of the multiverse, we come to see that Finn isn't destined to be a hero. He becomes one, through pain, through choice, and through the people he surrounds himself with. His journey isn't fate, it's forged. And as the wind continues to carry us through these variant lives, we notice something that binds them all together. Even the anti-Finns, in all their shadowed or shattered forms, still have that same flicker in their eyes. That deep, restless yearning for meaning. Even if some bury it beneath power or numb it with comfort, it's always there. The anti-Finns challenge our understanding of what it means to be good, to be brave, to be whole. They show us that there is no singular path, no guaranteed outcome, and in their darkest versions, they hold up a mirror, not just to Finn, but to us. What choices shape us? What paths do we avoid or unknowingly walk down? Who do we become when no one is watching? But maybe the most comforting realization of all is that even in the bleakest timelines, even in Finns who've lost their way completely, the chance for redemption, for reconnection, for rediscovery still lingers. The seed of the hero remains, buried, waiting, ready to bloom again. But let's gently close the door on these shadowed corners of the multiverse. We've seen what Finn could become when tilted into darkness or dulled by stillness. And now we're ready to step into something warmer, something more heartfelt. Before we drift into tonight's fifth tale of alternate Finns, I've got a question for you. If you could jump into any version of Finn's world just for one dreamlike night, which one would you choose? Pillow World? Farmworld? Or maybe something even stranger? Drop your pick in the comments. I love reading your answers. They make this dreamy community feel even cozier. All right, let your thoughts settle, your limbs sink into the mattress, and your imagination unfurl like a sleepy map. Tonight we sail into the realm of crossover Finn's echoes in distant realms. There's something curious that happens when worlds collide, when timelines twist together like strands of yarn and characters begin to echo across dimensions. Sometimes it's intentional, a playful wink from the creators. And other times it feels fated, like a quiet ripple in the multiverse trying to tell us something bigger, something deeper. Among those echoes are versions of Finn that emerge not just in OO or even its multiversal branches, but in other shows, other stories, other realms. These are the crossover Finns, and though their screen time may be brief, their resonance is oddly powerful. Let's start with one of the most well-known and perhaps the most obvious. The distant lands of OKKO, Let's Be Heroes. In this animated multiverse crossover, Finn appears alongside Jake in a vibrant, action-packed special called Crossover Nexus. But this isn't just a quick cameo. It's a loving nod to the deep cultural impact of Adventure Time. In this reality, Finn's design is a bit more stylized, a bit more angular, to fit into the art style of KO's universe. His swordplay is still sharp, his personality still warm, and his bond with Jake feels eternal, even when transplanted into a world that isn't quite his own. He's summoned there as a warrior, one of many champions, drawn from across dimensions, and yet he doesn't feel like an outsider. He blends in. More importantly, he leads. Because no matter the reality, Finn has a knack for finding the heart of a moment, even in chaos. This version of Finn, though just a sliver of screen time, raises a dreamy question. If a version of Finn can be summoned into another universe's crossover, how many others might there be? Versions living in entirely different animation worlds, brought forth by cosmic threads we can't see? Let's drift now into something more mysterious. In the Unikitty crossover, there's another flash, another hint. It's brief, almost like a vision in a dream, but there's Finn, again stylized to match the cartoon's vibrant tone. He doesn't speak. He doesn't fight. But his presence says enough. That unmistakable blue and white silhouette, that bare-eared hat. He is always recognizable, even when the world around him looks wildly different. Did you know that the creator of Steven Universe, Rebecca Sugar, was a storyboard artist and songwriter on Adventure Time? And in Steven Universe, while there's no direct Finn appearance, there are countless emotional echoes, characters shaped by the same gentle curiosity, same emotional depth. Steven himself, a compassionate hero shaped more by heart than by force, feels like a cousin to Finn, a what-if version. A Finn who was raised with gems instead of swords. In this sense, crossover Finns aren't always literal. Sometimes they are thematic. What if Finn had lived in Beach City? What if his adventures were musical, interstellar, and powered by love? That's the kind of dreamy speculation this segment invites. And there's more. Let's not forget Fiona and Cake, the versions of Finn and Jake reimagined within their own universe as gender-swapped characters, but who later take on a crossover life of their own. When they journey across worlds in the Fiona and Cake spin-off series, it's no longer just about alternate versions. It's about interdimensional travel, chaos, and self-discovery. In one timeline, Fiona may as well be a crossover Finn because she enters realities far removed from her origin and still holds on to the core traits: courage, loyalty, yearning for purpose. In some scenes, Fiona even feels like a matured version of Finn, someone who's lived parallel lives, worn different faces, but still wrestles with the same question. Who am I if I'm not the hero anymore? And maybe, just maybe, every time she stares into the unknown, we feel Finn's spirit there too, just beyond the veil, watching, waiting, ready. There's one final whisper of a crossover we need to mention before we rest this section. A visual only, fleeting, and debated among fans, Rick and Morty's background cameo of Finn and Jake as warped, mutated versions of themselves. In close Rick counters of the Rick kind, you can spot a distorted Jake and Finn floating in a tube in the citadel of Rick's. It's quick, grotesque, almost a parody, but it plants the seed. If Rick's multiverse contains everything, then perhaps Finn and Jake exist somewhere in its labyrinth, changed, twisted, but still there. Even if only as a joke, it's a chilling reminder. In the multiverse, every possibility exists. And that means, so do they. What's perhaps most striking about these crossovers is not just the novelty, it's the way they hint at a larger, perhaps infinite, fabric of storytelling. A place where Finn isn't bound by his usual context, where he can walk among Lego bricks, speak with vastly different voices, or be animated in entirely different styles, yet somehow remain himself in essence. In the Adventure Time era. Minecraft crossover special, we meet a pixelated ooh where every curve is squared and every sword is blocky. Yet the emotional beats remain oddly intact. Minecraft Finn isn't just an aesthetic skin his interactions, especially with Jake, still carry the emotional rhythm of the original show. He's curious, impulsive, a bit reckless, and wonderfully brave. He battles creepers and skeletons, but the subtext is the same. A boy navigating unknown worlds, holding tight to the bonds that matter. Then we have the brief but telling moment from OK, KO, Let's Be Heroes, where Finn shows up in a multi-show mashup. Though it's just a cameo, it reminds us that Finn, as a character, resonates beyond his own story. He becomes part of a shared animated consciousness. In this metaspace, Finn is not limited to the physics or canon of his home. He's a recognizable force of adventure and heart. There's also the Simpsons treehouse of horror couch gag, directed by Guillermo del Toro, where we spot a blink-and-you'll-miss-it version of Finn among the surreal crowd. He's rendered in the classic yellow-skinned style, a humorous nod, yes, but also a subtle acknowledgement of his place among animated legends. Even here, his presence evokes that signature mix of adventure, childhood nostalgia, and strangeness. And then, of course, we find one of the more celebrated, if unofficial, crossovers in fan circles, the world of Rick and Morty. In an episode featuring a fleeting moment of a multiversal courtroom, a version of Finn can be spotted, possibly as a fan insert, or perhaps an intentional Easter egg. It's short and absurd, like much of Rick and Morty, but it plays into this idea that Finn exists in echoes across other shows' universes too. These aren't just gimmicks or nods, they form a larger constellation of identity. Across every variation, even in visual gags, Finn seems to bring along a core feeling of boundless curiosity, of heart-forward action, of childhood bravery mixed with an aching need to understand one's place in the cosmos. And that's where it gets dreamy again, doesn't it? Because even if these aren't full-fledged characters with rich arcs, they hint at a truth that the Adventure Time multiverse has long embraced, that who we are isn't just defined by where we are or what shape we take. It's how we move through the world, how we treat others, what we choose again and again, in different skins and different skies. Take, for example, the concept art and scrapped crossover pitches from Cartoon Network's Vaults. There were early talks, though never realized, of a dimensional mashup involving Samurai Jack, Finn, and even Ben 10. What would that have looked like? A stoic samurai, a transforming alien boy, and our beloved Finn sharing a campfire under shifting stars. It never made it past sketches, but the idea lingers, and that's enough for our sleepy imaginations tonight. Let's also think about what it means when audiences carry Finn into other realms. In fan-made animations, comics, and cross-universe AUs, alternate universes, we've seen Finn ride with Steven Universe, face down monsters alongside Gravity Falls Dipper, or even fall into anime-inspired dimensions where his sword glows with new lore. These aren't canon, of course, but in the dream world of bedtime lore, who cares about canon? Every echo of Finn in these crossovers reminds us of something profound, that the soul of a hero can travel. The kindness, courage, and the quiet ache of growing up transcend the borders of their origin story. that even in worlds made of pixels or jokes or borrowed art styles, the heart still beats. And just maybe in the quiet moments between channels and stories, when the screen dims and the stars blink back on some version of Finn is out there, exploring another dream, still brave, still curious, still holding a sword made from something much softer than steel. One of the most poetic crossover glimpses comes not from a TV episode, but from merchandise art, those lovingly designed Cartoon Network posters or T-shirts that gather together a dozen shows into one sprawling scene. Finn is often front and center, sword raised or arm slung over Finn's shoulder. Even in these non-canonical mosaics, he's depicted as a connector, someone who belongs beside heroes from completely different worlds. His inclusion isn't forced. It feels earned, like a kid who grew up with cartoons now taking his place among the legends. And that brings us to something especially curious. In LEGO Dimensions, a crossover video game blending franchises like Ghostbusters, Doctor Who, and The Lord of the Rings, Finn appears as a playable character. Not just in appearance, but with fully voiced lines and special interactions. His moves are bouncy and chaotic. His humor is intact. He treats Batman like a new dungeon boss, and Gandalf like a weird Ice King variant. It's delightful. He's a fish out of water, yet not overwhelmed. He adapts with joy like a traveler who's just happy to be on the road again. This version of Finn doesn't know he's a crossover. He just treats the strange like it's Tuesday. And that's something very Finn. He has always walked between worlds. Candy Kingdom, Fire Kingdom, Ice Kingdom, the Nightosphere, the Spirit Realm. Maybe the jump to Gotham City or Mordor isn't that far off after all. Let's drift deeper into this multiversal tide. Some moments are so small, so quiet, they almost feel like dreams. In the Cartoon Network, Punch Time Explosion fighting game, Finn faces off against characters like Johnny Bravo or Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. There's no lore, no long conversations, just battles. But fans often read into these clashes a kind of hidden narrative, a suggestion that even across genre and tone, Finn's fighting spirit, his willingness to face anyone, friend or foe, remains a constant. And yet, in all of these crossovers, one theme shines gently through. Finn doesn't become someone else. He isn't overwritten to fit new rules. He doesn't harden to match a darker tone or become cynical to survive edgier worlds. Whether he's drawn in Lego bricks, cel-shaded animation, or a Simpsons-style smirk, he remains true to his emotional core. This consistency says something about his design and his soul. Finn is the kind of character that creators across studios feel comfortable borrowing without needing to change him. That's rare. He's not a blank slate, he's a clear signal. You drop him into any universe and you instantly understand who he is and why he matters. This is especially touching when you consider how Adventure Time itself has been a universe that welcomes others. Just as Finn can appear in other realms, his world is open to visitors and strange variations. Whether it's Prismo pulling strings from the time room, or Jake encountering alternate selves in the multiverse, or BMO telling tall tales that break the fourth wall, Adventure Time was always built to cross lines. Its world has gravity, but it doesn't gatekeep. In this way, crossover Finns aren't just cute cameos. They're proof of a narrative permeability, a willingness to play, to connect, to imagine what else could be. It's like a whispered bedtime thought. What if Finn visited your favorite show? What would he do? Who would he save? What kind of breakfast would he eat there? There's a childlike joy in that, and that's where Finn has always thrived. He invites other worlds in, not to conquer them, but to share something, to fight alongside someone, to eat snacks with them, to ask weird questions and fall asleep under new stars. And sometimes, these crossovers echo even further. In Fiona and Cake, we're shown a multiverse where characters slip across dimensions with emotional weight. And while most of those moments stay within the boundaries of Adventure Time's extended lore, they plant a seed. What if the multiverse is even bigger than we imagine? What if Finn's journey doesn't stop at Ooh's edges? Even the way fans draw Finn tells us something. On platforms like Tumblr and DeviantArt, there are countless mashups Finn as a Hogwarts student. Finn in a Studio Ghibli world. Finn reimagined as a Star Wars Jedi, or a pirate, or a quiet background character in a slice-of-life anime. These aren't just fan art. They're explorations of the idea that heroism adapts, that you can keep your moral compass even if the stars above your head change color. And in the quietest corners of the multiverse, maybe even in your dreams, there's a version of Finn who simply wanders, not seeking battles or treasure, but connection. A traveler not just through dimensions, but through stories. A boy who becomes a man not by slaying dragons, but by listening to others, laughing with them, sharing warmth. So the next time you spot a weird crossover moment, a strange cartoon pairing, a blink and you'll miss it Finn cameo, don't brush it off. Let it whisper to you. Let it remind you that stories stretch farther than we think, that our favorite characters aren't trapped on a single stage, but echo through dream worlds and starlit channels alike. Because somewhere out there, a version of Finn is still walking, still growing, still echoing through distant realms, and maybe, just maybe, heading toward your corner of the multiverse next. And so, as these crossover stories gently ripple through the vastness of the multiverse, we begin to see a pattern, a thread, a hum beneath the noise. Finn, no matter the shape or the shade, often ends up in the same place, standing for what's right, standing for his friends, and standing tall in the face of impossible odds, even when dropped into strange new worlds with rules foreign to his own. The essence of Finn endures adaptable, brave, and unmistakably kind. One curious example is the Adventure Time X Minecraft crossover. While on the surface it may seem like a novelty, it surprisingly preserves Finn's identity. In a world made of blocks and governed by crafting, logic, and survival mechanics, Minecraft Finn still echoes his core traits: exploration, loyalty, and a deep yearning to understand the world around him. Even in pixelated form, his story is one of companionship and discovery, of forging tools and friendships alike. Then there's Adventure Time, Fiona, and Cake, where things get even more layered. While Fiona is technically a gender-swapped version of Finn, the multiversal logic behind her existence has recently been redefined in newer episodes. Fiona, once a fictional character from Ice King's fanfic dreams, is now a real person from a parallel universe where the fantastical is fading. The latest iterations of her journey frame her as Finn in essence, someone grappling with the loss of magic, facing reality, and trying to find meaning in a world that isn't always kind. In Fiona, we see a version of Finn that's weathered by more ordinary struggles, rent, jobs, and the slow erosion of childhood wonder. And yet, what does she do when thrust into chaos again? She rises, she adapts, she reclaims wonder, a mirror, not just in appearance or name, but in heart. And let's not forget the Adventure Time, Distant Lands, Together Again. Special, where Finn journeys through death itself in search of Jake. Though not a traditional crossover, it might as well be. We see Finn traverse spiritual planes, shift forms, and even interact with different versions of himself. This journey through the afterlife is a kind of cross-universal odyssey, and within it, We see flashes of countless Finns, all searching, all loving, all fighting for what matters most. In the special, Finn dons armor reminiscent of other timelines. He converses with cosmic entities, fights beside ghostly champions, and even risks losing his memories of Jake to complete the quest. It's a reminder that across life, death, and every liminal space in between, Finn's purpose echoes. There's a moment where he hesitates, afraid that all his struggles, all his lifetimes, might not have mattered in the end. But Jake, ever his anchor, reminds him, it's not about whether things last. It's about the love you gave while they did. That kind of message resonates across all crossovers, because even if worlds shift and names change, Finn's heart doesn't. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing whispers among fans. The theory that Finn exists across multiple dimensions as part of a larger, interconnected, cosmic loop with every crossover, every alternate version, feeding into a grander multiversal design crafted by the Time Room, or even Orgalorg's meddling. What if all these Finns are not just variations, but fragments of a whole, each learning something vital, each contributing a piece of the puzzle, so that when the universe calls upon its greatest champion, it's not just one Finn who answers, but all of them, together across time and space, across game code and gender flips, across fan fiction and memory. And so, dear sleepy traveler, we lie back again, imagining the vast map of the multiverse stretched across the stars, each point of light a world, each world a version of Finn. One fights dragons in a video game kingdom. One races through portals with a cat by her side. One climbs icy mountains, sword in hand, spirit unbroken. And somewhere, on the quiet edge of it all, maybe there's a Finn lying in a field under a moonlit sky, just like you now, wondering who he is, who he might have been, and what dreams might come next. Let's carry those dreams into the final part of tonight's story. Across every version of Finn the human that we've met, whether it's Farmworld Finn with his icy vengeance, Pillow World Finn who found peace in a gentle dream, or Shoko, the stealthy loner searching for meaning in a world of betrayal, there's a thread. It's not his sword. It's not even his iconic hat. It's something deeper. Finn, no matter the world, is always searching for truth, for love, for purpose. And when you step back and look at all the versions side by side, you start to notice it's not about who he is, but about why he keeps going. His spirit is the constant. His drive to do good, to protect others, to grow even when it hurts. Let's go back for a second to the original Finn. The Finn we meet at the very start of Adventure Time. He's loud, excitable, a little reckless. But even then, he's bursting with courage. Not because he knows he'll win, but because deep down, he hopes he can help. That spark is never absent. And even when he fails, and oh, he does fail, he reflects, he tries again, and he changes. It's that evolution that truly defines him. And it's echoed in every alternate Finn we've explored. Each one is like a prism refracting a different part of that same bright core. Now let's think about Pillow World Finn again. He lived a whole life in what seemed like a dream, grew old, had children, built a home, and passed away in peace. And yet, when he awoke, even though he returned to his younger self, something had changed. That quiet maturity, that calm depth in his eyes. The experience stuck with him like an invisible thread tugging from within. That's the thing about growth. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's as soft as a whisper in the dark, shaping you even when you aren't aware of it. Pillow Finn didn't fight epic battles. He didn't save kingdoms. But he did face time itself. He let go of fear, embraced love, and accepted the ending. That version of Finn is arguably one of the most emotionally evolved, showing us that heroism isn't always about drawing a sword. It's often about being present, kind, and willing to let life unfold. And then we have Shoko, alone, distrustful, hardened by betrayal. But her story isn't just a tragedy, it's a beginning. Even in a life steeped in pain, the tiniest choice to do something right, to reach for the light even once, echoes beyond her lifetime. She chooses to protect Princess Bubblegum's lab, not for reward, but because something within her knows it's the right thing. That moment of redemption, as quiet as it was, paved the way for a new beginning, reincarnation, rebirth, a second chance is the Finn we know. So what does that tell us? It tells us that Finn isn't defined by one life or one outcome. He's a pattern, something the multiverse repeats over and over. Not perfectly, not identically, but in spirit. Whether raised in war or peace, in loneliness or love, Finns across the multiverse seem to move toward a common point: growth through compassion. And what about the anti-Finns? The darker reflections. They too hold a clue to understanding the core of Finn's identity. They show us what happens when that compassion is warped, when the world gives pain, and pain is all they know to give back. These Finns remind us that the spirit of a hero is not just gifted, it's chosen, over and over again, in big and small ways. You see, in every life, Finn reaches a crossroads. Should he protect or destroy? Forgive or take revenge? Reach out or walk away? And the version we know best, the one who adventured with Jake, who forgave his enemies, who cried when he needed to, and who sought peace as much as victory, chose the path of growth. He stumbled often, but he kept choosing love. That's what made him more than just a warrior. It made him human. But if we take a gentle breath here and look across all these different Finns, Farmworld Finn with his rifle and burdens, Pillowworld Finn with his soft legacy and family, Shoko, the silent shadow seeking purpose, and even the anti-Finns and the crossovers, they all share one central thread. It's more than just their name, more than the sword on their back or the color of their hat. It's something deeper, something woven into the soul of every version. Let's think about it like this. Finn, no matter the timeline, tends to find himself at a crossroads between duty and desire, action and stillness, battle and peace. Even when the universe splits or crumbles, something in him remains strangely intact, this unshakable compass. A kind of moral gravity that always pulls him toward helping others, standing up for what's right, or questioning when things feel wrong. Even when that compass falters, as it sometimes does, he learns from the imbalance. He grows. He doesn't give up. Take the way Pillowworld Finn faced death. In that moment, he wasn't scared. He looked back on a quiet life well lived. No dragons slain, no ice kings or demons, just warmth, family, and the simple truth that a peaceful life was still a good one. In contrast, Farmworld Finn lived in a far colder universe, one where he lost almost everything, and yet he still chose to protect his family. That core of who he is, selfless, brave, deeply feeling, it just doesn't go away, no matter the world. Shoko, while not technically Finn, carries the same spiritual essence. She started as a thief, but found redemption, not because someone forced it on her, but because something in her wanted to be better. Her story ends in quiet tragedy, her memory only living on in the haunted shell of her past body. Yet the actions she took echo through the Candy Kingdom. It's as if the spirit of Finn The yearning to become more than what the world shaped you to be was living in her bones. In many ways, this segment is about how the identity of Finn is less about the individual and more about the choices. It's a soulful archetype, like a myth that keeps reappearing across dimensions, slightly different each time, but always familiar, always that spark of hope in human form. Let's talk about that hope for a moment, because even when Finns go dark, as in the case of some anti-Finns, there's often a flicker of regret or doubt, a whisper of the path not taken. These versions may act as a warning of what Finn could be without love or guidance or Jake by his side. But they also serve as proof that it takes effort to maintain that goodness. It isn't automatic. It's a daily decision. And decision is such a huge part of what makes a Finn a Finn. He chooses to help, to stand back up, to listen, even when it's hard. In the original timeline, we saw Finn age, stumble through heartbreak, face cosmic forces, lose his arm, lose his brother, yet he never really hardened. He stayed soft where it mattered, curious, kind. He was never perfect, but he never stopped trying. That persistence, gentle, stubborn, unshakable, is maybe the most Finn quality of all. And what's even more comforting is this. If Finn exists in so many timelines, shaped by such different circumstances, and still ends up making those choices, maybe we all can too. Maybe the reason Finn feels so relatable isn't because he's the ultimate hero or the strongest sword fighter or the purest soul. Maybe it's because deep down, we all know the feeling of wanting to do good, even when it's hard, of getting back up even after we fall, of choosing softness in a world that sometimes demands we be hard. So when we watch Finn across these multiverses, we're not just seeing different adventures. We're seeing different answers to the same question. What kind of person do I want to be? And just like Finn, our answers might shift. They might take strange shapes. But the heart of it, our inner compass, can stay strong no matter what path we find ourselves on. And so we start to see Finn not just as a character, but as a kind of archetypal flame, flickering across time and reality. In every dimension, that flame burns with a unique color, but it never truly goes out. You'll notice that even when worlds collapse, when timelines are erased or rewritten, when memories are lost or identities fractured, Finns tend to gravitate toward the same emotional pillars: courage, curiosity, compassion, and connection. That last one, connection, is especially powerful. No version of Finn exists in a vacuum. He's always drawn toward others, be it Jake, a family, a kingdom, or even strangers in need. That desire to connect becomes a universal constant. In Pillow World, he built a life not just of comfort, but of quiet love. In Farmworld, even amidst dystopia and disaster, his motivations centered on protecting his mother and little sister. Shoko, abandoned and alone, still ended up forging a bond, however brief, with the Princess Bubblegum. Even the darker Finns, isolated or corrupted as they might seem, often reveal a kind of emotional wound, a connection that was lost or never formed properly. This theme runs deep. Adventure Time has always had an emotional core, and Finn, across his forms, is a walking symbol of it. He's the kid who grows up, the warrior who learns to feel, the hero who realizes that being brave isn't always about fighting. It's sometimes about feeling things all the way through. Remember when Finn lost his arm for the first time? It wasn't just a physical loss. It marked a turning point in his story where his internal growth began to outpace his external adventures. That moment echoes in Pillow World, where the battles are gone and all that's left is love and memory. It echoes again in Shoko's final act of kindness, and again in Farmworld, when he chooses not to wield the crown, even though it might save him, because deep down, he knows the cost is too high. These choices are the real weapons in Finn's arsenal, not his sword, not his skills, but his values. His refusal to compromise what matters most, even when the world asks him to. There's also something quietly profound in how the series handles this multiplicity. Adventure Time never insists that one version of Finn is the real one. It allows all of them to coexist, to express something meaningful. There's no hierarchy of worth between Pillowworld Finn's peaceful ending and Farmworld Finn's rugged survival. Each of these lives speaks to different facets of the human experience: loss, growth, joy, regret. This idea that multiple versions of the same soul can live completely different truths and still be whole feels incredibly comforting, especially in a world where we often struggle with our own contradictions. We want to be brave, but we get scared. We want to be kind, but we lose our temper. We want to move forward, but we get stuck in the past. Finn's Multiverse says, "That's okay. Keep going." He doesn't always win. He makes mistakes. He messes up relationships, overestimates himself, reacts impulsively. And still, he's loved. He's important. He grows. He keeps choosing the better path when it's offered. And even when he doesn't, the world doesn't erase him. It waits for him to come back. In this way, each Finn becomes a mirror for us. Not just who we are now, but who we could be if we made a different choice, if we were braver or softer or more honest, or even if we needed rest. That might be the secret power of Finn's many lives. They remind us that we're allowed to change and still be ourselves. And what's even more remarkable is how each version of Finn finds their own kind of peace. Even those who stray far from the familiar path eventually encounter a moment, a breath, a choice, a quiet realization that grounds them, as if some part of them always knew the way home, no matter how many universes away they wandered. Farmworld. Finn lays down the crown. Pillowworld. Finn finds the warmth of family. Shoko chooses kindness in her final act. Even the darkest reflections, Finns touched by evil, warped by loss, often show flickers of that same light deep inside, a light that never fully goes out. And that light, perhaps, is the heart of what it means to be Finn. Not just a hero, but a seeker, a soul in motion, not perfect, but persistent, not always right, but always trying. There's something deeply reassuring in that, because in Finn's journey across the multiverse, we're reminded that the path doesn't have to be clear for it to be worthwhile. That even when things fall apart, something beautiful can grow from the pieces. Maybe that's why these alternate Finns resonate so much. They're not just what-ifs or throwaway gags. They're emotional thought experiments. Each one asks, what if I had to start over? What would I hold on to? What part of me is truly unshakable? And across every world, in every form, we see the answer take shape. Finn's core never disappears. It adapts. It learns. Sometimes it breaks, but it mends. And in that resilience, we find something timeless, a story that feels less like fiction and more like a lullaby for the soul. In a way, the multiverse becomes a kind of cosmic bedtime story, each version of Finn tucks gently into their own world, their own ending. Some of those endings are loud and chaotic. Some are soft and still. But all of them matter. All of them are part of something bigger. So tonight, as you drift off, maybe you'll imagine them all, each Finn asleep in their own little corner of the cosmos. One resting in a field of pillows, another watching the stars over a frozen farm, one in armor, One with a robotic arm, one with scars, one with peace. And at the center of them all, maybe there's a quiet room, a place where all those echoes gather. A place where the spirit of Finn sits with every version of himself smiling gently, no longer running, no longer searching, just being. Because in the end, to be Finn isn't to save the world. It's to feel it, to hold its joy and sorrow, to reach out a hand even when you're afraid, to keep walking even when you don't know the way. And that's the real adventure. And maybe it's the one we're all on. Good night, traveler. And may your dreams carry you across kind multiverses to the paths where your truest self is waiting.